All right, well, welcome. Again, if you need, for those who are coming in, if you need seats and you have extra seats near you, just weigh people down so they can sit here. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you for being here. I don't think you're going to be disappointed today. I think you're going to be challenged and inspired. Our guest speaker, Dr. Rupert Nacoste, is alumni distinguished professor of psychology, North Carolina State University. He's written a book called Taking on Diversity. He's written several books, but this is his latest. And actually, he's here because I started using this for my class, and I was saying more people need to hear this. And we started communicating, and he didn't have to come all the way from Raleigh, North Carolina to address us out here in the middle of Arizona. But he has, and he's been an inspiration. Besides the fact that he has no sense of humor whatsoever and very little stage presence, I think you'll enjoy him a lot. Yesterday, our best estimation is we had over 400 people hear Dr. Nacoste. So,
really? Wow.
Jill Fitzgerald, my dean, has provided a few copies in our department of the book, and I've got one extra copy here. I'll loan it to you. If you, what's that? Put it on course. Gosh, librarians tells people. Everybody's trying to tell me what to do. Yes, that's it. We will. And you can go to Amazon.com and just type in Taking on Diversity, and it'll come right up. One of the things I appreciated about it, and one of the reasons I chose this textbook, is because it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. His publisher, he said, did a very good job of this. So I thank you for that, Rupert. And without any further introduction, because you're going to get to know him real quickly, for better or for worse, Dr. Rupert Nacoste.
He's already getting to know me too well. I've been at North Carolina State University now going on some 30 years, teaching large sections of Introduction to Social Psychology, 200 students at a time. I have developed a certain reputation. I don't always know what that reputation is. So funny things happen. One morning, there was a time when I still had knees that worked. I would start the day in the gym. This is after my military service. I always was in the gym. So I'd go to the gym, work out, get cleaned up, and head somewhere near campus to have coffee and a muffin. I do not want to talk. I want to get coffee and a muffin. That's it. So I'm standing in line in this place called Global Village, standing in line to get my coffee and muffin, standing behind people who are ordering all kind of mochaccino hanahinas. And what I want is coffee, black, muffin. That's it. I'm standing there, and then I feel a presence. Boop. And a little voice says, "Excuse me, sir." I do not want to talk. But I turn, look down at this young white female, and she says, "Are you a professor?" "Yes, I am." "Oh, I've heard so much about you." I said, "You've heard about me?" She said, "Yes, I've heard all these things." I said, "What have you heard?" She said, "That you're this great professor in the classroom, you do all these things, you show videos, you do all this stuff." I said, "Okay. And who's telling you all this?" She says, "I have friends who've taken your courses." I said, "Okay." Now remember, I didn't start this. All I wanted to do was get coffee and a muffin. So I didn't start this. So careful what you do with a professor, especially in the morning. I looked at her and I said, "So how did you know I was that professor?" So she went from to oh. I said, "How did you know I was that professor?" I'm just waiting now. I didn't start this. Finally, she says, oh, she sees what I'm wearing. She says, oh, they say you wear those shirts. And I do. And I said, really? You knew who I was by the shirt I'm wearing. And she was like, oh, God. I said, what else did my students tell you about me that help you identify me? They said that you're a big black man. There you go. You better say it. Trust me, I tell my students this all the time. Yes, yes, yes. You need to describe me. Because on graduation day, I've won every teaching award at North Carolina State University. On graduation day, you're going to want to bring your parents to me and say, I want you to meet my favorite professor. I said, okay, you better describe me. Because you'll say, I want you to meet Dr. Nacoste. Oh, Dr. Nacoste, okay. First name is Rupert. Okay, Rupert Nacoste, Dr. Rupert Nacoste. What's the image in their head? All right, people, you're not going to bullshit me. What's the image in their head? Oh, little white guy, little person. Okay, and then this shows up. And people have done it. Students have messed it up. They've not described me, and their parents have been walking towards me, and I've been walking towards them, and the parents' eyes get bigger and bigger and bigger. People have done all kind of foolishness. You see them, they want to tap dance backwards as I walk towards them. And people have done really interesting things in their nonverbals. How do they shake my hand? So nice to meet you. Describe me. There's nothing wrong with describing me because what else could you do? What are you going to say? Am I not a big, giant, dark-skinned black man? I am indeed, and proud of that. There we go. So there's some interesting dynamics in America now. I think I've noticed that people are afraid to acknowledge that they notice race. Is that going on? Yes. It is going on. And indeed, my students tell me that people are worried about being perceived as racist if they give evidence of noticing race. Really, evidence of noticing. That's going to make you a racist. There's a problem. Because people say, they try to deal with this by saying, I don't see color. Really? You don't see color. You don't see none of that. Really? Everybody in that picture looks the same. I don't see color. Really? Stop it. One of my favorite cartoons, the context of which has changed a bit. White police officer stops a black man. First off, I want you to know that I don't see color. I pulled you over because you ran that red light. How did you know the light was red? But I'm bummed. Okay. See how foolish that is? And, of course, as a psychologist who understands a bit about the biology of behavior, I want to point this out to you, that your seeing what's in the environment is not a psychological matter. It is not a psychological choice. It is the brain's way of working. The brain. You don't get trained to see color, not to see it. Why not? Because the occipital lobe of the brain pushes you to see it through the rods and cones in your pupils. That is not your choice. So if you don't see color, you've got a neurological problem, and you need to get that fixed. What are people trying to say? What are they getting at? I don't see color. Say it again. I'm not racist. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. Who do they say it to? Yes. They look at somebody like me and say, I don't see color. Why the hell are you telling me then? Stop it. Stop it. And we have to help people understand why that's a problem. So I think the problem is this. People have jammed these things together. Prejudice, bigotry, and racism, 3 different concepts. People just, you notice how in America we love calling people racist? Racist, low down, hummer. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about this. I am a Louisiana black Creole. I am from the area of Louisiana known as Acadiana. Et toi, c'est bon. Laissez les bons ondulés. Et toi, oh yeah, c'est bon. It's so good. Laissez les bons ondulés. Let the good times roll. I am a Louisiana black Creole. From the Bayou country, close to the Gulf of Mexico. I am not from New Orleans. I am not. People always, when I say Louisiana, go, New Orleans. No. I am from the Bayou country. I am part of the real Who Dat Nation. The real one. Because that's not about a football team, by the way. Who dat? That's Creole Cajun. Who dat coming to my house? Who dat? So that's not about football, because that's been around over a century. Don't let people fool you. But in Louisiana, the reputation is we eat just about anything. One of the things we've been eating is nutria, which is a rat about yay big. What? I heard somebody say, What's wrong? What? Have you had nutria? No. Oh, you have not. And yet a reaction to the idea of a rat. You know what we say in Louisiana? You just cut that up, put a little sauce on that, you got yourself something. Tastes like armadillo. Not chicken. Yeah, we eat armadillo too. Okay then. Yeah, so a reaction to a stimulus you have not had an experience with. A negative reaction is a prejudice. It's a prejudgment. Now do that at the group level. We prejudge groups. That's a group prejudice. A prejudgment. Why? Because it's a prejudgment of a whole group of people. You cannot have an interaction with a whole group of people. So it has to be a prejudgment. But here's an interesting question. Does the person who holds such a prejudice have to show that prejudice in the presence of the stimulus? No. The well-socialized person can certainly be polite and cordial in the presence of one of them. Yes. But if it does come out in behavior, that group prejudice, that's bigotry. Bigotry is the behavioral expression, outwardly observable behavioral expression of a group prejudice. That's bigotry. Isn't it funny that we're not talking much about bigotry in America? We're starting to now, finally. But for a long time, it was always straight to racism. Straight to racism. Racist. So let me help you out. Racism is never in a person. I say again, racism is never in a person. Why is it not in a person? Because racism is institutional, organizational. I grew up in the Jim Crow South. I could not go to school with white kids my own age because it was against the law. Hear that again. It was against the law. That is racism, institutional and organizational. So people have confused these, prejudice, bigotry, and racism. Wow, where is all that coming from? Where is it all coming from, all that anxiety? So in the summers, I don't teach. I haven't taught in the summer in decades. And I don't teach. I usually write, but this past summer, I was just a bum. I was. All I did was read for fun. One of the books I read as a bum, American Eclipse, David Barron. I wondered, since I've been here and looking out at the beautiful landscape, the mountains, just blows me away. And suddenly it occurred to me, wait, was this in the path of totality? It was not. Oh, that would have been something, wouldn't it? Okay, yeah, I wasn't in the path of totality where I was either. But anyway, I read this book thinking about the upcoming eclipse. And the book is about the eclipse of 1898, where people were as excited but had less experience, and the scientists were trying to find ways to observe. So that's what the book is about. It's very interesting about the book, talking about 1898. The author had to do something very interesting, describe the social context, or at least he decided to. And that social context rested on American intergroup dynamics. 1898. Isn't that something? What do I mean? Well, American intergroup social context, 1898. Reading about the eclipse chasers meant reading about intergroup matters in America. I'm a social psychologist, so I couldn't help but notice. And I had, as I was reading, these flash thoughts about the intergroup dynamics. Flash thoughts. Okay. Barron, the author, talked about the lingering effect in 1898 of the Civil War on scientific motivations. And I flashed, nothing in the psychology of American enterprise is uninfluenced by the one-time enslavement of African peoples. Barron talked about the fact that people were still talking about Custer. I flashed, no part of our history is untouched by the unfair genocidal treatment of American Indians. Barron talked about an outsider eclipse chaser, a woman professor from Vassar. I flashed, nothing in the psychology of the American enterprise is uninfluenced by the too long resistance to acknowledging the powerful intellect of women. American Eclipse. The book is not about those flash thoughts. It's not. It's about eclipse chasers and the scientific endeavor and what people were trying to do. But to talk about that in a real way, he had to lay out the intergroup context of America. Even in a book about early American astronomy. Yes. People keep asking me, what's the state of race relations in America? Turns out that's the wrong question. Why would I say that? In American Eclipse, my final flash thought, Barron talked about the fact that following the woman scientists from Vassar were a group of young women who wanted to be, and some of whom became scientists against all odds. And I flashed, nothing in the American psychology has been so profound and important as marginalized and discounted people pushing through and defeating America's too many intergroup bigotries. Pushing through and defeating. What does that set up? The 21st century. That's how we get here, to this neo-diverse America, where everybody's in the room. That's how we get here. That's where we are. This time and circumstance where people from many different groups are free to walk around and be engaged in the American promise of the pursuit of happiness. We are now a neo-diverse nation, whether you like it or not. Neodiversity, this 21st century time and circumstance where in America we all have no choice but to encounter and sometimes interact with people not like us on some dimension. On some dimension. Religion, political affiliation, race, sexual orientation, mental health conditions, sex of person, nationality, all that stuff. Doesn't matter where you go. You are going to encounter and sometimes have to interact with somebody not like you. That's neodiversity. That's the situation that we are now in. So understand, neodiversity is not about a who, it's the what. It is an interpersonal situation. It's interpersonal. Who sits next to you? Who walks into a classroom? Who is in Walmart? Who is waiting on you in your diner? Who is standing next to you in line in the diner? Yes. We're all in the room now. And that neodiversity can cause a lot of interpersonal anxiety about how to interact with people. Anxiety about who are the we and who among the they. Racial segregation did this very powerful thing. Immoral and wrong, but it did a very powerful thing. It made it very clear who was a we and who was a they. Because the we's could go here and the theys couldn't. I grew up in the Jim Crow South. Movies, doctor's offices, hospitals. Should I keep going? Everything. Parks. Everything. And then we got rid of that. Yeah. As we should have. So now people have anxiety about who are the we and who among the they, because you can't tell just by looking. Why is this so important? Nothing in the American psychology has been so profound and important as those marginalized and discounted people pushing through and defeating America's too many intergroup bigotries. People like to talk about racism, but a lot of what we're talking about is bigotry. And it has led to this new American context. This pushing through has led to this new American context of neodiversity. As I say, I grew up in the Jim Crow South. We got rid of those laws, those un-American laws. But how are we doing in these days of neodiversity? Yeah, we're all just a mess. It's like, ow! Some days you don't want to turn on any of your technology. I'm a newspaper reader. Sometimes I don't want to do that. Certainly don't want to go on social media. Oh, because wow. How are we doing with this anxiety? It's all over the place. Oh, it's not just cities. Colleges and universities. Oh, yeah. Racial graffiti, anti-gay and lesbian graffiti, anti-Muslim graffiti. High schools. Just a joke. Just a joke. Just a joke. Really. Spell out the word nigger and that's just a joke. College students know better, right? UNC Charlotte. It's very important to understand that whatever's happened here has happened everywhere. UNC Charlotte, somebody decides to put up a sign over a water fountain that says colored, and they think it's a joke. Tell me that's a joke. It wasn't a joke when I had to follow it, because it was the law. And it's not a joke now, because it's not funny. So how do we get to this weird place we're in 2017? Again, 28 years, all going on 29. Young people trying to learn. So you professors and instructors in here, that's the context you have to always keep in mind. These are young people trying to learn how to navigate life. I teach a lot of students, and it's always a neodiverse set, a mix of students by way of race, gender identity, sex, all of that, always. And trying to navigate life. Some of these young people call this attempt to navigate life adulting, which confused me to no end when I first started hearing it. Adulting. What? What? Yeah, adulting. And it freaks them out. And I finally understood the depth of that when I found this. That horrifying moment when you're looking for an adult, but you realize you are an adult. So you look around for an older adult, and an elderly adult, somebody better at adulting than you. What? This is the context in which we teach. Do not underestimate that. No matter how arrogant they may seem, this is the context in which we teach. Because some of that arrogance is just this problem of trying to figure it out. And they start pretending by way of arrogance. You got to deal with that quickly. But I'll get to that point. They call it adulting. So what we're talking about, and a 65-year-old man can say that, we're talking about children. Yes. I don't care if you think you're an adult. And I don't care if you're struggling with it. When I teach, I know who I'm teaching. I had an office appointment. This is just an example. A young black man in my office talking to me about some class issue, and then he starts talking to me in the language of oppression about racial oppression at North Carolina State University. I went, racial oppression? You're sitting in an office with a senior faculty member at North Carolina State University. You're talking about racial, okay, help me with this. I said, you did get enrolled. Nobody stopped you because of the color of your skin. Oh, yeah. And you get to take courses. People teach you, no matter the color of your skin. So you get to use all the resources. Yeah, use our state-of-the-art library that's just third in the nation. Yeah, I said, so, okay. What are you talking about? And I said to him, I grew up in the Jim Crow South. Legal racial segregation, where the law said. And he said, oh, yeah, well, Dr. Nacoste, when we hear about that, it just sounds like a big joke. What? A young black man just said to me, a 65-year-old black man, that what I went through and what my parents went through, my father born in 1918, in the Deep South, that all of that was a big joke. Really? That's the other context of young people's lives. They don't know crap. Arrogant or not. They call this a big joke. Really? A big joke? Separate everything by law. By law. A big joke. Who is holding the dogs? Who's letting the dogs loose? The law. And I know young people say this to each other. I know this because students confide in me, scary as I may be. They confide in me and say, well, some people say that, all that racial segregation, that it wasn't so bad. I say, you tell them and come and say that to me. Because I was there. I grew up in it. You come and say that to me. A big joke. And that's how we get here. Too many Americans believe it's okay to tell racial jokes, racial slurs, express racial stereotypes in conversation, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, yeah, all that. On campus, as you have experienced. But it's not just race, where people feel like they can joke and poke. It's not just race. Mental health conditions. People literally say, young people, call other people retards. Oh my God. And every young person in here knows they've seen it, they've heard it, and they may have said it. And that's supposed to be okay because it's just a joke. There you go. Same with gender. Jokes about women, rampant on college campuses. But here's the funny thing. We social psychologists, we study this kind of stuff because everything that we talk like this is all social interaction. So, social psychology. So we study the impact of jokes, the power of jokes in social interaction. And when it comes to jokes about women, here's the thing. When an organization allows for jokes about women to move through that organization, it increases the likelihood of discrimination against women in that organization. Why? Because it implies approval of that demeaning way of looking at and thinking about women. So no, it is not just a joke. We are not post-racial. We are not even post-gender. People casually joke and poke about other folk. That's the context in which you're teaching. How have we gotten so confused about how to have productive interactions with our fellow Americans? Somebody turn that technology off. How do we get from the civil rights movement revolution to this strange America where people think it's okay to joke and poke about other folk? Social change. Fast and dramatic. Fast and dramatic. I grew up in the Jim Crow South. Yes, students think that's ancient history. I always have to say, hello, still here. Still here. Nothing ancient about it. We went from that, race riots in American cities, race riots in the American military, desegregation of schools. Yes, race riots in the American military. I was in the Navy 1972, 1976. Race riots aboard ships carrying weapons of mass destruction. 350 major racial incidences in the Navy between 1970 and 1975. I was on board an aircraft carrier where we had a 3-day race riot at sea. Weapons of mass destruction all around. We've gone through all that. You're right in the room, not sure how to react. They're like, ah, and that's been the whole case with him the whole time. People are like, ow, ow, ah, okay, yeah. People who voted for him are having those reactions. Like, I don't understand, okay. People went cuckoo. Wow, black president. Oh, wait, he's biracial. Well, oh, wait, he was reared by his white mother and white grandparents. But he's black. He looks black. Okay, wait. Okay, well, he's Christian. Christian! Barack Hussein Obama. Okay, wait. What's the category? What do you get the ha? Yes, people were nervous the whole 8 years, even people who voted for him. Amazing. But the reason is categorization. We want to keep it simple. Couldn't do it. And without understanding that moment of change, because it was a moment of change. I grew up in the Jim Crow South, and for 8 years our president looked like, okay. In my day of growing up, nobody would have even thought that was a possibility. And yet it all happened, and I'm still alive. But without understanding the context of that change, it is no wonder. Without knowing the real history, thinking it wasn't so bad, it's no wonder so many Americans struggle. And so many Americans believe the struggle for civil rights was just a big joke. And that's how we end up with this on college and university campuses. It's just a joke. A sign that says colored over a water fountain. Too many Americans don't know about, don't want to admit. And so they can't fully understand how things have really changed in America. Look around this room. In the Deep South, in my day, this room was illegal because there are too many brown-like people in here, and especially me standing at the front. Oh, hell no. The stormtroopers were coming. That's not a joke. The police were coming with guns to break it up. But you don't know that context, young people. So you think you can get away with calling stuff a joke. And you instructors and professors have to understand the context of their lives, the absence of real information, the absence of real knowledge. Oh, my students tell me. I went through high school, they say, yeah, we talked about civil rights for maybe an hour. And what we figured out was, things were bad, but then Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech and everything was all right. You do understand that he was assassinated after he gave that speech, right? So, not so bad. Young lady to my right, I'm talking, you're not. Don't do this in front of me. And you know I'm talking to you. Understand who I am. The room is mine. Am I clear? Well, I better be. Yes, this is the way I teach. All the time. The room is mine. People who don't like that can leave. That's not a joke either. We struggle. Fast and dramatic social change. Fast and dramatic. And it keeps changing. Demographic change. Keeps changing. Racial and ethnic minorities make up more than half the children born in the U.S. now. The complexion of America will change, and no one can stop that. But people are nervous. Diversity is on the rise, and Americans are nervous. Just today, this morning, I'm reading USA Today, and whoo! I picked it up just to read the newspaper. I'm a newspaper guy. I got to read the newspaper. Okay. Over breakfast, and look at the headline. Oh, God. The headline, poll portrays an unhappy America. Poll portrays an unhappy America. Okay. 64% say this country is on the wrong track. 64% of Americans say that. And they point to anxiety. Inside, you find an article about changes in transgender rights from our government. A shift. Then in the sports page, you find a story about the NFL and kneeling, where the writer is so angry that he literally says that the NFL has been punked by our president. He uses the word punked. Like, man, okay. And then on that same back page, a story about women in sports. It's dumbfounding, the writer says, that in 2017 we have to remind people that everyone in the workforce, men and women alike, should be treated with courtesy and respect. That a woman in sports, media, or business, or medicine, or any other profession there is just as capable, just as informed as the guy sitting next to her, maybe even more so. Editorial page. An editorial about the idea that people who on the left, right there you got a category problem, on the left, see white Americans as, other white Americans as racist. And he says generally white Americans aren't racist. And that's actually true, because America is not a nation of bigots. We are not. If we were, nobody would be in this room. So here we go. We're not. But look at what we're struck. Look at this. That's today. That was this morning. In one newspaper. Understand the context of the lives of the people you're teaching. The stimuli that are coming at them that are done not in your classroom, but that reverberate in your classes. And professors are not immune to this intergroup anxiety. You have opinions, you have beliefs, you have concerns. You're not immune. So America is filled with that anxiety. People ask, showing that anxiety, why do we got to keep talking about this stuff? Okay, because we've never really dealt with this stuff, that's why. But, and there's so much going on that really it's not about race. It's not just about race. Race is the prototype, but race is sometimes the most salient, but it's not just about race anymore. And your college students everywhere know that, and they feel that. There's a lot going on all the time in these struggles. So we're not talking black and white. We're talking neodiversity. And neodiversity has a number of dimensions. International, gender, race, communication technologies. And I do include communication technologies in neodiversity. Why? Because we are over-relying on communication technologies for social interaction. The research is really clear that over-reliance on communication technologies leads to feelings of social disconnection, that is, less feelings of social connection. Ooh, that's not good. We are social. I am a social psychologist. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a cloud be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manner of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never sent to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. We are social. But the more we rely on these communication technologies, the less connection we feel to each other. Be careful, young people. But understand this, instructors and professors, that's the context of their lives that they bring into your room. And it creates this thing called virtual distance. A sense of detachment, which is why you can turn things that are really awful into believing you can just say it was a joke. You see that connection? You're disconnected from the reality of life. spending time swiping, swishing, pinching. I don't know what else goes on. No, because I don't have a cell phone. See, I heard it. I was waiting for it. People are like, what? How can you live without? I'm 65 years old. Cell phones came into existence, the iPhone, in 2004. What do you mean, how can I live? I've always lived without. My students say, oh my God, you don't have a GPS? I said, why do I need a GPS? I know where I'm going. They're like, oh my God. Oh. See, but that's the context of their lives. You have to understand that that's what's walking into your classroom. Is it semesters? Semesters. I didn't know whether it was quarters. Every semester. Okay. That's what's walking into your classroom. It's not just somebody who wants to learn a particular academic discipline. There's a whole bunch of stuff walking in that has to do with neurodiversity anxiety, that has to do with use of communication technologies, that has to do with an absence of understanding of our real history. That's all walking in. And that's why the advice we get from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is so important. Don't panic. And do you have your towel? You got to have your towel. Never quite understood that book. There's a theory. This is from the restaurant at the end of the universe. There's a theory which says that if ever anybody discovers exactly what the universe is for and why it is here, it will instantly disappear and be replaced by something even more bizarre and inexplicable. There's another theory which states that this has already happened. Boom, boom. Neurodiversity. This has already happened. Exactly. So to all of us, just when you thought you understood the universe, something else changes. Neurodiversity can have an anxiety effect based on that. That's the first reading in the handout for instructors in a packet that you'll get at the end. This neurodiversity anxiety stuff, the many dimensions of it that are walking into your classroom. College students experience it as, who am I sitting next to? That simple. And they'll tell you, they always, once they figure out the class that day, this is my seat. I don't want to move. I don't want to move. There's a reason for that. The packet has all kind of stuff in it. I'll keep going. 7 principles. I'll go over a couple of those. Managing a college classroom, examples for safe space rules. I'll spend some time on how to have difficult conversations. Those are the main ones. Here's this neurodiversity anxiety that is all over America. It's an anxiety about who are the we and who among the they. 911 really pushed on that. Now you have to also understand that in your classrooms now, some of your students don't know what that is. Certainly at my university, there are students who were so young, if they were born. We can say 911 and mean something, and they look at you like, Oh, here's a really silly example. Really silly. So I'm preparing to come here, and I've got to give my students an assignment for the day I'm going to miss, Wednesday. And I'm thinking about all that, and then I realized, I'm flying into Phoenix. And what popped into my head? By the time. Okay, that popped into my head. So I said, okay, that's how I'll frame it for them. So I put it up on a PowerPoint. By the time I get to Phoenix, okay. Then I opened the class up with it. I said, first slide, it just said, by the time I get to Phoenix. And I just waited, and I kept waiting. Because they don't know. Like, what? I said, okay, you never heard? I said, Glenn Campbell? They're like, I'm so old. But that's the other thing we have to understand. We can't take things for granted, the references we want to use. You can't do it. You just can't do it. By the time I get to Phoenix, they're still wondering, what the hell was Dr. Nacoste talking about? What? I don't know. They're probably Googling it by the time I get to Phoenix. I'll ask them when I get back. But that's all in neurodiversity anxiety. Yes, and some of it is pushed in really dramatic ways. But you are teaching to a neurodiverse classroom, whatever you're teaching. Whatever you're teaching to a neurodiverse classroom. There are people in the room, you don't know their identities. Your students don't know their identities. Okay, I have to warn my students about this. I said, you know, there are Jewish people in the room. You cannot see Jewishness. There are gays and lesbians in the room. You cannot see that. The whole idea of having gaydar is just a foolish idea. I have one male student who nobody would think is gay, but I know he is because he's talked to me. All you see when you see him is military. Big, broad-shouldered, muscular. Yeah, but he's a gay man. Okay, then. So whatever you're teaching to a neurodiverse classroom, whether you know it or not. And you're teaching into a classroom where that neurodiversity anxiety is floating around about who are the we and who among the they. Have you noticed it here? Tell me. Have you? Somebody's shaking their head. What have you noticed?
There's a lot of differences with religion, like you were saying, but socioeconomic is a big gap here. A lot of higher and lower socioeconomic, so you don't know what's really.
Hang on. Let her finish. Hang on. Finish your question.
People have different struggles. Like I was from a very, very low socioeconomic background, so things that kind of affect me don't affect other people.
Okay, so socioeconomic background, a mix of that in the classrooms. She's seen it that way, where people expect certain things, and it creates anxiety in their social interactions. Somebody turn this thing on. It's on the bottom. Other questions? I mean, not other questions. How else have you seen it here at the college? Yes.
There was a swastika scratched into a stairwell area, actually in this building, I think. In the
A swastika. A swastika. Where are we? We're in Arizona.
I interviewed a young man on campus who is Native American, and he said that he doesn't speak up a lot in the classroom because he knows that his accent he speaks slowly and that people will think that he's stupid.
Okay. Neurodiversity anxiety in the classroom, no matter what you're teaching. It's there, floating around in some form or another. Here. So it's not all over there, it's wherever you are. Neurodiversity is not about a who, it's about a what, the interpersonal situation. All those examples are about interaction problems. It's interpersonal. You put up a swastika for a reason, to deliver a message. You don't know how to interact with someone who's not from your own socioeconomic position. That's an interaction problem. A student who is Native American does not want to speak up because he thinks he speaks slowly, and other people, because of that, will think he's, did you say stupid? Stupid, and then they'll generalize that to his group. That's neurodiversity anxiety. All of those. They're in your classroom. Students come to the college classroom with all kinds of expectations that don't fit the social reality of a neurodiverse campus. That's how you get a swastika. But that's true across academic communities in the nation. I've been writing about this. So whatever you're teaching to a neurodiverse classroom, but don't panic. Whatever you're teaching, there is an intergroup history attached to that discipline. There is. It doesn't matter. I know there are people working on nursing degrees. Anybody in the room? Okay, there's an intergroup history attached to nursing. Yes, there is. Whatever it is you're teaching. Somebody give me another example from your field. Yes. Computer science. Why do you say there's an intergroup history? Numbers. Okay. Intergroup history of technology fields. Oh my God. North Carolina State University, when I got there, 25% or so of the student body was female. Now it's 50%, and many of those students are in engineering, physics. Suddenly. That's because of an intergroup history. Whatever it is you're teaching, there's an intergroup history, so find that history. make it part of your teaching. It helps students because they don't know. You're taking too much for granted. And that will settle some things in. That will enrich in their learning of the trade, the discipline, whatever it is. Because every discipline, field of work has an intergroup history. People don't like to admit that, but it's there. Cowboys. On TV, movies, cowboys are always white. No. Anybody been to the Denver Black Cowboy Museum? That's a nice, there you go. You went, what? See? Exactly. It doesn't matter. There's an intergroup history attached to what you teach. Find that history. Use that history as part of your teaching to help students, to show students how far we have come, not to beat people up, and to point out what work still needs to be done. And there's some other things you have to do to manage the classroom in this neurodiverse world. First day, this is where your towel comes in. First day is critical because students are trying to do some things as a social psychologist I'm very aware of, but that's because I'm a social psychologist. Other people may not be aware of it. Students who walk in any classroom are trying to figure things out immediately, quickly. One of the things about going from high school to college is when you go to a classroom, you have no idea what's about to happen. Why? Because instructors, professors teach the way they teach. There's no uniformity, in other words. So students are trying to figure this out first day, aren't you? Yes, you are. What are the roles? What are the rules? What are the interpersonal relationships in this room? Roles, who's really in charge? Everybody knows who's in charge this morning. That's what I'm doing. That's all. What are the real rules for classroom interaction? Now you know those too. What's really available for relationships? Students are trying to figure that out the first day. First day. And they're trying to do it quickly. How you walk in that room as an instructor, professor, matters. First day ambiguity can lead to some real problems. I love this story. This is real. Professors cleared of battery charges in a laptop case. A jury voted not guilty in the trial of an assistant professor who had been charged with battery of a student by allegedly closing a laptop lid on her hands. Can you see that moment? Student sitting there, and the professor walks up and goes, "What?" So let's talk about the mistake the professor has made that led up to that moment of frustrated confrontation. What's the mistake the professor has made? Not just that, before that.
You did let her know the expectations of what would happen.
What are the expectations in here? You didn't say anything the first day, so now it's already evolved into something that you are not in control of because you didn't say it the first day. Look, we're talking about professor-student relationships. In my model of relationship development, there was a minor mutuality, very early stage of relationship development. So the student's question is, how am I being treated? How does this discipline, college, university treat me and people like me? Students are trying to figure all this out all the time. It's a human motivation to figure out interpersonal situations. Always is. This is just the student context. Oh, that's too bad. 7 principles. Here's principle 2. Set a pattern and tone for social interaction in the classroom. First day. How's this going to work? Okay, here's the funny thing. I walk into my classroom, auditorium. We dealt with some things on the first day. I walk in, this is the first full class. I have my stand. They know that when they see my stand, they should get ready. I told them that the first day. They should not be getting ready when I walk up to that stand and start talking. They should already have their pens. It should be ready. They should be ready. I tell them this. I said, I'm coming in hot. I said, look, I was in the Navy. I was not a Navy pilot, but Navy pilots talk to each other in a certain way. And when they're aiming at a target, they say, coming in hot. Well, guess what? You're my target. I'm coming in hot every day. So when you see that stand, get ready. So I walk in, and I move to the stand, and I say, good afternoon. And 200 students roar back at me, saying, good afternoon. Because why? That's the expectation. And then I immediately say, today we are talking about. I'm just rolling. There's no ambiguity. None. The room is mine. They know that. So tone that has to include that. Who's in charge? What are the rules? Don't be overly friendly. Yeah, they're lovely young people. Yeah, they're fine. However, I'm not going to be your friend. I will be friendly. That's not the same thing as being your friend. I'm a nice guy. As long as you don't break my rules. And then it's something else. No, that's just the truth. And they know that. Students say, oh, wait, I made a mistake. Okay, sorry. Yeah, you did make a mistake. And students are working this out by every move you make. And it's every move you make in terms of group membership, too. Remember neurodiversity? Yeah. Yeah. They want to know who you might favor. They're checking you. They are checking you. Young faculty tell me, after hearing me talk about this up to this point, they say, well, you could do that. I mean, look at you. Listen to you. You got that big voice. Look at you, a giant. Students got to listen to you. They say, oh, okay, so you think that's the only reason that works. Okay. First day matters. Timothy J. Reed is a former undergraduate student of mine who served as one of my teaching assistants. Right now, he's in his second year as a graduate student at Syracuse University. And he wrote me to talk about the fact that he's now leading a course. And he wrote me to say this. He said, as I sit in my office preparing my syllabus for the upcoming semester, a familiar voice fills my head with these words. You're not going to like this class. I actually say that the first day of class. The reason I say that, let me help you out here. You're like, what is he talking about? It's a course I teach as interpersonal relationship development. And what I say to my students is, if you want to hang on to your naive, romantic beliefs about relationships, you're not going to like this class. Yeah. Can love conquer all? I say, you wonder about that. Well, I'm going to answer that question in this class, and you're not going to like the answer. So you're not going to like this class. You're looking at me like, whew, how does he, really? Yeah. And I won every major teaching award at the university. So it works. And that's what Tim was writing to tell me. He says, I smile remembering that uncanny combination of terror and excitement that overcame me as I left class that afternoon, my class. Although I employ slightly different tactics, I hope my students leave the first day with the same similar reaction. And one certainly did. One of his students wrote to him and said, wrote in a course evaluation and said, he came across as a real hard ass on the first day, but now he's my favorite professor. Tim went on to tell me this. While I despise the necessity of my first day routine. See, that's one of the things sometimes instructors and professors do. I don't want to have to say that. Well, it turns out you have to say that. Otherwise, it gets out of hand quickly. While I despise the necessity of my first day routine, similar in message to yours, but stylistically different, its effectiveness is undeniable, he says. Recently, I had a professor sit in on one of my classes and approached me in disbelief once all the students left, and the professor says, how do you keep them off their phones? A professor says this. Well, his classroom is a mess. How do you keep them off their phones? No one talks when you talk. What are you doing? No one was late. Tim goes on. I smile thinking back to my experience in your courses and explain what I learned to my professor about teaching under your tutelage. I go on to explain my first day routine. How I lay out high expectations. And encourage students to drop the course if they don't want to be in it. Okay. So, Tim's doing it. People say, I can't do that. Look, you can do it, but look, you're a big giant man. Yeah. Tim. My mini me, so to speak. Anybody can do it. Students are trying to work this out. Beware of being too chummy. You make false assumptions. Especially in these days, because you don't know who's in the room. You don't. You might think you know. That's where you get in trouble. False assumptions. Here's a story for you that was written by one of my students because it's her intense interpersonal intergroup experiences for my upper level course. She wrote, I had just finished the final exam of one of my social science classes and joined the line of other students to turn it in. I watched as the students before me handed in theirs and shook the professor's hand. It was a class of around 200 and I sat toward the back typically. Therefore, I had never formally interacted with the professor. One by one, students handed in their exams and left as the professor spewed off neutral comments like, have a great break, happy holidays. When it came to my turn, his usual script changed. Yeah, you can feel the trouble coming, right? Like, uh-oh. Yes, his usual script changed. His usual script changed. I handed him my exam, shook his hand, and said, thank you softly. Without hesitation, he blurted out, Happy Hanukkah! There you go. I walked away quickly so the line could continue, but I remained confused. Why had he changed his script for me specifically? I listened to the interactions between the few students that went after me and the professor to see if it was just for me that his comment had changed. And indeed, it was just me. Students are paying attention to everything you do. He changed his script just for her. I love this next line. I am not Jewish. False assumptions. False assumptions. And the student says, I left the interaction startled. So now this student's perception, evaluation of this professor has changed. And whose fault is that? The professor's. False assumptions. You think you know everybody who's in the room just by looking at them? Come on now. This is the kind of stuff I write about. One of the basic tips I give is never try to interact with a person as a representative of a group. To you instructors and professors here, I said never try to interact with any of your students as a representative of a group, because you're going to make a mistake. And trust me, word will spread across your campus. Every move you make is being interpreted. So you have to control yourself. Managing the classroom. And then there's this desire right now that many people have on the necessity to engage the class in difficult conversations. University issues, events come up on your campus and off your campus. There's a lot going on, right? Well, it's not like just because somebody's taking a class, they don't know that a lot's going on. It doesn't mean that they're not affected by what's going on. We're a socially mobile society. Yesterday, after one of my lectures where I talked about the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina and the vest I was wearing yesterday, a young man walked up to me, shook my hand, thanked me for being here, and he said, thank you for David's story. And I just looked at him like, okay. He says, oh, I'm Lumbee. And he says, I always have to prove this to people because everybody tells me I'm white. And he literally reached in his pocket, pulled out of his wallet a card that said Lumbee tribe. Who's in the room? Like you could know. And when these things happen, Someone in the room is resonating in a personal way. It's walking into your classroom. Is it appropriate for your discipline to have these conversations? It may or may not be. I don't know that. But I do know that people want to have these difficult conversations. But so if you are doing so or trying to do so, here's a tip. If you're going to do this, you have to know your own vulnerabilities. I've been doing this kind of work since 1974, and I'm always checking in on me. What are my vulnerabilities now? How do you have difficult conversations? A key point from a book called How to Have Difficult Conversations, and you'll get the reference. Even though the facilitator, the one leading the discussion, may believe themselves to be enlightened, the facilitator will still find these conversations to be difficult. So each professor, each facilitator must work to be prepared to experience feelings of anxiety, uncertainty, and vulnerability when we facilitate a discussion. So teach only what you can handle. What you can handle. Because they can get out of hand. Something like Charlottesville happens, and you just want to say something. Be careful. Are you ready to say something that's educational? That's educational. That's not just, ow! Educational. It's still a classroom. If it's just emotion, keep your mouth shut. Because that's not educational. You can do that at home. So know your vulnerabilities. Teach only what you can handle emotionally. So here's a story about teaching racial slurs. I get a lot of stories from students. They write stories for my class about their most intense interpersonal intergroup interaction. Here's a story about a student who's sitting in a sociology class where somebody wants to teach about racial slurs. An African American wants to teach about racial slurs. Okay? Now, racial slurs, you say racial slurs. Okay, are you ready to do that? Here's the story. Oh, God, I'll read it. I thought I cut that up better than that. Anyway, even I can read it up here. Are you emotionally prepared? One day, a few weeks, I just left the camera. One day, a few weeks ago, I gotta stay here. One day, a few weeks into the semester, we were talking about the history of racial slurs. One instructor made it clear while we could discuss almost anything in the class, she would not stand for discriminating language. That makes sense. Okay. The class discussion would usually get very intense, but on this day, one thing crossed the line. We were talking about how certain racial slurs first formed, and how they've been used or are used today and all the harm they have caused. A white student raised her hand and said, "Why is it okay for black people to use the N-word?" Okay, when asking the question, she actually said nigger. Boom. The instructor walks towards her, I'm in the third paragraph, walks towards her and says, "You don't ever say that word." Wait, didn't you say we're going to talk about racial slurs? Didn't you say that? The person isn't using the racial slur. They're saying, why is it okay for some people to say nigger? That's not using the racial slur. But now the professor has lost their mind. It's just, was that professor ready? Clearly not. You have to know your vulnerabilities. Well, I lecture on racial slurs, and I use all the words. All of them. But I'm making a point. But at the end of that lecture, my students are slumped down in their chairs because I've gone right at them. It would be easier if all black people were. It would be easier if all women were. It would be easier if all Asian people were. I want them to feel it. And then I go home because it hurts me to have to do that. No, really, it does. You think I want those words coming out of my mouth? No. But I'm delivering an education in a context of education. If you're not ready to do that, leave it alone. Teach only what you can handle emotionally, and not everybody can handle everything. I've been at this a long time, but I grew up in the Jim Crow South. I've seen some things nobody else in this room has seen up close. except for one person. So good to see you today. Teach only what you can handle emotionally. And for whatever you're teaching or discussing, keep the social context in mind. No matter what you're teaching, there's a social context walking into your room. Computer science is a social context. Math, social context. And every classroom is neurodiverse, visibly or invisibly, by race, ethnicity, nationality, gender identity. There's stuff going on that you cannot see. You cannot see ethnicity. People do this with me all the time. I'm a big, giant black man, but I'm Louisiana Creole. There's no way you can see that. C'est bon. C'est le bon temps roulé. You cannot see my Roman Catholic upbringing. You cannot see my 12 years of Catholic school taught by nuns. You cannot see that. You cannot see ethnicity, so you don't know. I had a number of people talk to me at the end of lectures yesterday, students, racially mixed, ethnically mixed, and the struggles they've had on your campus because people say stuff right in front of them, thinking they know who they are. You cannot see that stuff. Welcome to the future. Here it is. We make too many false assumptions about identities, false assumptions about who is in the room. Teach. Teach. Don't assume. I do a lot of listening. A lot of listening. Not when I'm lecturing, but students ask me questions, come to meet with me, and all of that. I'm very careful about certain things. One of the things that's really interesting nowadays, at least on the East Coast, and maybe here as well, is this whole question of students reacting to the question of where you from. Where are you from? And students tell me that people, they say, well, I'm from Cary, North Carolina. I say, no, where are you really from? So that's that's a different question, isn't it? So I did it about 6 months ago with a student. I said, where are you from? He told me, blah, blah. And then I asked him, I said, I asked that question, and I know there's some tension about that. He said, no. You asked, the tone of voice was not a challenge. It wasn't where you really from. It's just where you're from. Students are paying attention to voice inflections. Your false assumptions may come out of you non-verbally. You need to check yourself. David, you can't see ethnicity. You can't see his membership in the Lumbee Nation. So, sorry, I went the wrong way. See where I am. Yes, okay, you can't see David's Lumbee American Indianness, but that's who he is. And trust me, he's a proud Lumbee Indian. Don't call him anything else. I know, David, you don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And that's why I keep saying diversity in black and white is dead. Long live neo-diversity. This is a new context. That context is walking into your room. Students come to you with all kinds of funny expectations that don't fit what you're trying to do here. They need help dealing with this new interpersonal situation. So keep that social context in mind, the social context of neo-diversity and neo-diversity anxiety. Keep it in mind. The examples you use and all of that. Students are always trying to work this out. What is my role? What are the rules? And how can I have interpersonal relationships here? They're trying to infer that on the first day. On the first day. So do you have your towel? What's your towel? In my case, it's my syllabus. I use the syllabus in a serious way. I have a safe space rule, for example. It's in the reading handout that you'll get. It's in the syllabus. It's not me just saying, well, we're not going to. No. It's in the syllabus. I have it for both my classes, Psych 311, Psych 411. You can call it safe space. You can call it discussion rule. You can call it what you want. But it should be in the syllabus. And one of the worst things you can do is not enforce this rule that you say you have. So, teaching in the 21st century, especially my Psych 311 course, which is on interpersonal relationship development, and I talk a lot about romantic relationships. I get to learn some things about what young people are dealing with. One of the fun discussions is the day I asked this question. On the first date, who pays? And he's looking at us, we're like, ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's a fun discussion. 200 students, all kinds of opinions about that. You know, the traditional opinions, well, the guy. And then, I love this. This is a part of the new dynamic. A male puts his hand up and says, well, the guy always pays. I'm the male. I can pay. You know, I have to take care of her. Woo. As soon as he said take care of her, a female hand went up. I said, yes. And she said, I can take care of my damn self. Okay. So, right. Okay. So I get to learn what young people are dealing with. There's a set of concepts that move around that, but I do it with this discussion with them. In one semester, I was doing that. Young woman in the center of the room, the auditorium, puts up her hand. And I said, yes. And she said, well, it's really interesting, Dr. Nacoste, when there's two women on a date. And the students in the room were like, oh, no. And I went, oh, hell no. I roared into that moment. I said, you will not discount the experience of one of your classmates. Not in my room. You know the safe space rule. Just like you're silent, they were then silent. And then I said, young lady, you were saying. And I kept my eyes right on her. And she said, well, it's really interesting, Dr. Nacoste. Two women on a date, there are no real cues. No real cues. No role cues. I said, you're absolutely right. That's very interesting. And then I moved to the next person. It's just a discussion. But after that class, I went up to my office and sat at my desk because we have a setup now where I can email the whole class. And I emailed them. And I said this. Last class period, when I asked for your opinions about who pays, some of you forgot that we have a safe space rule. When I ask for an opinion, I am not asking for foolishness or for opinions everyone will agree with. The point is for you to hear and learn. That there are a lot of different ways people inhabit the social world. When your classmate brought up the very interesting issue of two women dating and who pays, some of you made noises like little children. I will not have any of you pass judgment on another student's experience or way of living in the social world. Not in my classroom. In my classroom, we have a safe space rule. And here's part of that rule from the syllabus. And I remind them, and I show them, and it's in the handout for you. I won't read it here, but it's very clear. Then I said, some of you need to pull out your syllabus and remind yourself of my full statement of the safe space rule, which I went over the first day of class. If you are uncomfortable with the rule, your only option is to drop the course, because we will live by the safe space rule in my classroom. Nobody dropped. But the funny thing is, students thanked me. And the really funny thing is, the students who made a point of thanking me were all male. I got emails, I got handshakes, only from males. Yeah, here's the email at the end of the semester. Dr. Nacoste, I'll keep this brief. I felt like writing you to let you know that your class was very enlightening. I really feel as if I learned a lot, and I only hope that I can apply it well. I would also like to thank you for your safe space policy. In the beginning of the semester, when a couple of people were sniggering at comments about lesbianism, you let them know it was inappropriate. Many other teachers would have changed the subject or simply dismissed them, but you didn't, and I greatly appreciate that. That's from a young male at the end of the semester, thanking me for the safe space rule. My other class, my interpersonal relationships and race class, I have a class discussion policy. I say we will have open and honest discussions about racial interactions, racial misunderstandings and confusions. To make our discussions authentic, we will not attack each other. Notice that sentence. And we will pledge not to take any person's name outside of this classroom. Leave here and talk about what we said so that you can understand it better, but leave here the classroom with no person's name except mine on your lips. In other words, who says what in here stays in here. So I do give them permission to use my name. And literally I tell them this: you can walk out of here and call me all kind of low down, no good, never was nothing, never been nothing. I don't care. I served in the United States Navy. I led racial group discussions in the Navy on board ship. You think you got something? men, 35 at a time, a racial mix. You think those conversations were polite? I don't care what you think of me. I really don't. So, safe space is part of the tone. Mutual respect for your classmates, but that has to be shaped in your classroom, instructors and professors. It's not automatic. It's not automatic. Oh, they're all nice people. Okay. You know what kind of conversations go on in their home? Do you? You know what kind of language they've heard before they got here? Do you? You have to shape your classroom. And I develop respectful rapport. My students are scared of me after a while. I develop respectful rapport with these young people. I always refer to young man, young woman. I'm starting to work on that because of pronouns I'm learning. They, them. I have to figure that one out. And if someone tells me, then I know how to figure it out for that particular person. Respectful rapport at the end of the first exam, which we just did last week. I had this bonus question where they've told them about myself being a Louisiana Black Creole. I'm from Opelousas, Louisiana, not New Orleans. And then I have a multiple choice question at the end. That's a bonus question. Dr. Nacoste is from. It says New Orleans, Haiti, Opelousas, another planet. Then one semester, respectful rapport. Young man turns in an exam. He sees me, he walks over to me, he says, so, that bonus question was another planet, right? Yeah, I said, get out of here, boy. No, we have fun. We have fun. But I set the context for that fun. So you have to establish these things in your classroom. Roles, who's really in charge, what are the rules, relationships. Use your towel, use your syllabus in a serious way. In a serious way. Remember this story? Allegedly closing a laptop lid on her hands. Woo! Here's my technology policy for both my classes. It's in the syllabus. We go over it the first day. I don't just hand out the syllabus and say, oh, okay, we're going to go over these things, blah, blah. No! I walk through every point on that syllabus and ask them if they have any questions. I get to the technology policy, I say, you will not have open in my classroom a laptop. You will not have out an iPad. You will not have earbuds. And as soon as I start saying that, they start taking them out. Putting over. I say, it's fine today. Just don't ever come in here again that way. Because this is the policy. This is the policy. This is my room. Mine. If you want to learn from me, if not, you can take another course. That's very simple. But this is my room, and these are my policies. Use the syllabus in a serious way. Serious way. The first day. That's how you avoid this mess. I mean, this assistant professor is out of control. But that's their own fault. As you say, they didn't set expectations in any way. And then they want to get mad at the student. Use your syllabus, because students are trying to figure this out. No, I didn't always have a safe space discussion policy. I didn't. It's only been the last 10 years in my 30-year teaching career. Why did I start putting that in? Social context change. I could see it on my campus. It's certainly happening in America, but I was seeing it on my campus. That meant I was seeing it in my classrooms. More and more brown people in my classroom. More and more hijabs in my classroom. Salma's a lovely young woman. Traditional. Notice the way I'm standing next to her. She came running up to me. I was at an event outside our student center, and I was a speaker. And I hear this squeal. Okay, so I turn and here comes Salma running towards me. Dr. Nacoste, it's me, Salma, your favorite student. Okay. Okay, Salma. And she wants to take a selfie with me. Okay, but look at my body positioning. Where's my left arm? There we go. She's traditional Muslim woman. I am not a family member. I've had to learn. You have to understand that's a real effort for me because I'm a touchy professor. I talk to my students. I'm like, so are we doing all right? How's it going? You know, like that. I'm always doing that. And with no, I've never touched Selma. I literally have to do this sometimes because it's my tendency. I feel really a warm connection to Selma, but I can't let that become behavioral. I can't because it's disrespectful. But she is one of my favorite students. She's just a lovely young woman who's full of life. Look at that smile on her face. Salma. She's just funny. Yes. So I didn't always have a safe space discussion policy, but America has changed. We are now a neurodiverse nation. My campus is a neurodiverse campus. That means in my big room, there's a lot of different folk in there. A lot of different folk in a 200-person auditorium every semester. Yes, there are. So I decided to start adding this safe space rule because I knew the kinds of discussions I wanted to have. And so I had to guide my students through that. Muslim woman puts up her hand, you're going to listen. A lesbian woman puts up her hand, you're going to listen. A transgender person puts up their hand, you're going to listen. This is who I teach, a neurodiversity of students, every semester. Every semester. Not every now and then, because our social context has changed. As the professor, I had to figure out what I needed to change. So I didn't always have that safe space rule. That noticeable social context changed what I do in the classroom. It's also influenced my work as a social psychologist. That's where that comes from. Student stories, those intense interpersonal intergroup stories. Student stories make the core of this book. What we do as teachers in the college classroom, what we do is very important. Our teaching is important. How we teach is important. All that is important to the future of America. In the words of Honor Bontemps, we are daybreakers. Daybreakers, he says. We are not come to wage a strife with swords upon this hill. It is not wise to waste a life against a stubborn will. Yet would we die, as some have done, beating away for the rising sun. We are not come to wage a strife with swords upon this hill. It is not wise to waste a life against a stubborn will. Yet would we die, as some have done, beating away for the rising sun. That's what we do. We beat away for the rising sun. Thank you for your time and attention. My friend. You can ask me questions, I guess. I don't know what time it is. I don't know anything.
Yeah, we're going to grill him now. Okay. If there are those of you here who may be thinking, in the central highlands of Arizona, out here, stuck in the middle of almost nowhere, this doesn't happen yet. Doesn't happen in our classrooms. So I like to be vulnerable and share an incident that happened to me this semester, first day of class. I've shared this with Rupert. Okay? So this is race and ethnic relations. I'm supposed to be doing this stuff, supposed to know what I'm doing as a professor, right? And so we're going around, and introducing, I have them put name tags on, and there's these two girls who have the same last name. Okay? And so one of them was a little darker skin, wasn't one of them's a little lighter skin. I assume they were maybe cousins or maybe sisters of different parents. I was trying to be sensitive, being friendly, you know. Don't laugh, Rupert. This is not funny. Okay?
That's a good story.
And so I go up to them and I said, I'm thinking, what's the safest thing to say? Okay? I mean, what would be the least kind of... So I said, oh, are you sisters? And they looked at me and they say, no, we're married. This is in my class this semester. Okay?
Welcome
This
to
is
America.
real, folks. This is real. And you may not know what's going on in your classroom at Yavapai College, but I'm going to guarantee you it is. It is. Questions? How did you respond? I was like, yeah, that's how I responded. And I said, oh, that's cool. You know, I just looked at him and, you know, I didn't like, oh, really?
Good.
You guys are gay? No, you know, I tried to be accepting of their situation. Okay? And the relationship has really developed over the semester.
Yeah.
Okay? One of the positive things that came out of that from neurodiversity's perspective is my other students now know
There you go.
that there is a gay couple in our class. And it really has opened up some interesting discussion around intergroup relationships.
And that's one of the reasons why I do those discussions in my classroom, where I ask questions like, who pays? So that students can hear from each other. Because otherwise they assume everybody's doing what I'm doing. I also do, what are the goals of dating these days? And
We don't
you know,
date.
People, you know, the young people think, well, everybody, you know, if I go out with somebody, yeah. Then they hear other people say things like, to get somebody to surprise you with food, to get my apartment cleaned, to, no, people say this stuff, which changes the way you think about what you're doing. And then they realize why they're so confused about, are we dating or not? When I 4 or 5 times somebody says, are you dating? Go, I don't know. And that's why this thing has emerged where young people start talking about whether it's official or not. Some of the more mature people in the room will know that that was never the way it was framed. It was never framed that way. Likewise, it was never a question about who pays. This is all new and neurodiverse. And that's why we have to help our students. Sorry.
Absolutely. But Rupert, you need to know.
Okay.
Okay? I'm telling you.
Stop.
You are not official unless it's announced on Facebook. Okay? That's just the way it is right now.
Okay.
All right. Questions, comments, concerns? Raise your hand. I'll bring the mic to you. Let's start with Terry here.
Fall 1990, very first class, Introduction to Statistics. Have a young Navajo student comes to the office, stand up and do, kid from Montana, that's me, right? You shake hands with people, you look them in the eyes, you tell them, welcome, you know, you do this whole thing. This poor Navajo kid almost died. You know, here I am, I'm not part of his clan, I shouldn't touch him, and on top of that, I'm in this other group that he doesn't want to be touched by. A week later, his parents come to see me and explain they had to do a blessing way to clean the kid up after I touched him, and could I please just keep my hands to myself? And they were very nice, very respectful,
sure.
But it just shows you the depth of your own ignorance. Sometimes, I'm not generalizing you as the depth of my ignorance, but it was an amazing experience to have the parents explain to me how upsetting it was to this kid that, and I could have given him a chindi, I could have given him some evil spirit from my clan or something. And, you know, there I am just trying to do what I was taught to do in graduate school, approach the student, look them in the eyes, shake their hand, make them feel welcome. I did the exact opposite of what I was supposed to do. And as a compliment to the kid, he hung in there and took the stats class, did real well. But without the parents' intervention, I don't think it, you know, would have happened. So
You couldn't have made it.
you got to be. It is a very diverse classroom, and you don't know what. Sometimes you just don't know the rules.
So look, that's a great story, and I have one just like it. the reason I point to Selma and my nonverbals, the way I control myself. Well, I had made the mistake with Muslim women. One semester, around Eid, two traditionally dressed Muslim women who've been in my class the whole semester at this point, still early, come down to me to ask me about getting an excused absence for this religious observance. And I said, of course, the university does that, so we'll take care of it. And they're traditionally dressed, and they always, every day they're traditionally dressed. And I said, is there anything else? And I said, no. They said, thank you, Dr. Nacoste. So I said, great. And I reached out and touched both of them. There you go. Okay, so I go to my office, get my stuff. I'm driving home. La. It hit me in my stomach. Because I've read a little bit. I'm learning more. And I realized what I'd just done. I am not a member of their family. I am male. And I have just touched them. Oh, God. And I wasn't going to see them for a while because of the holiday. So the next time they were in class, I did my lecture, And at the end of the lecture, I looked at them and I said, come here. And they were like, uh-oh, what we do wrong? And as soon as they got close to me, I did this. Because I know my tendency. I put my hands behind my back, and they stood right in front of me, and I said, I am sorry for offending you last time by touching you. Now, I want to be clear about what an apology is. I did not say I'm sorry if I offended. That is not an apology. I said, I am sorry for offending you by touching you. And then I just waited. And I'm watching them, and they look at each other, a little smile on their face, and say, it's okay, Dr. Nacoste. We think of you as an uncle. But your point, there are things going on in the room we don't know. In that case, I should have known, but I wasn't thinking. I was just doing what I do. La, ha. Yeah, don't do that. Control your tendencies till you know something. And now I'm an uncle.
I have a question that you didn't exactly address. We hear the phrase teaching tolerance.
Ooh.
Thank you for that reaction. I hear that and I think, oh my gosh, that's like saying diversity is a bad thing that
Bingo.
we're supposed to tolerate.
Bingo. If you read my book, I do it in the book.
I have not read it yet.
Okay, the whole thing, I do it early in the book. The whole idea that you tell people they have to be tolerant. What? Who's tolerant? The person in the higher position, that's who's tolerant. The person who has to put up with somebody, that's who's tolerant. No, we teach respect, not tolerance. That's what we should be doing.
One of the things I remember from the first time reading his book, and I believe you said this, correct me if I'm wrong, he says, it really hit me. Tolerance is a terrible relationship goal.
Exactly.
Think about this. You're married, you're dating. Yeah, I want to be tolerant of my wife.
Oh, see?
Yeah, that's going to work well.
That's right.
And that was the point that I was going to make is everyone knows when they're being tolerated. It feels really different than being respected.
Yes, it is, isn't it? And when you're tolerating somebody, even you don't know what you're about to do. Because you just got to put up with them. Just put up with them? No. Respect.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Corinne. I was in Dr. Shelley's race and ethnic diversity class a few semesters ago. I read your book, and one of the things that I really took away from it is that I appreciated that you gave us language for having hard conversations. And I feel like, to me, that was very important. Something happened to me at work the other day. One of my coworkers was saying how she had to correct basically her son's education the other day because he was miseducated about slavery because the first owners of slaves were actually black. And it really got me to thinking about honestly, how do you counter fake things that people tell you when you don't have a direct counter to the information, but the only thing going through your head is that's total bullshit.
That's right. Well, then you need to walk the hell away from that moment. And there's certain things you can't in interaction fix. people are miseducated, and we've allowed our education system to do that. There was a big controversy in Texas about a textbook that referred to the enslaved Africans as immigrant workers. It was in the textbook. But you see the kind of miseducation that's floating around. So that stuff, in the moment, you're really not going to. You can state your understanding, but then you just got to let it go. Oh. Uh-huh.
It's something that, like, it could come up again. We talk all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We see each other all the time, so it could come up again. You know, we talk about our families a lot.
Well, there are people who are writing about this miseducation. So if you can find a short piece that talks about that miseducation, that would help. If you want to just hand that, but you can't continue the argument in a work situation like that. It just becomes non-productive.
I just kind of want to add to that. What do you do as a teacher in that situation?
Well, now if you're a teacher,
yeah, that's a little different, right?
That's a little different.
Yeah.
Because you can bring in resources. You can talk about what historians, you can bring in the history, the actual history. So that's a different situation. This is much more purely interpersonal than a teaching situation. Students don't know anything. No, it's true. Okay, I just did this work application. Look, students come to our campus with all kind of arrogance, but the truth is the only people who know something in the real way are the professors. We know stuff. I tell them, you came here to learn, not to teach. The stuff you learned in high school? Trust me, we're way, way past that. Why? Because we create the damn knowledge. So, but see, I'm not afraid of 19-year-olds. Some professors have told me, I don't know what to say in front. I said, you're the professor. I'm in no way in fear of a 19-year-old. Never have been. So you can bring in resources if you feel it's important enough.
So this information is rampant, and I just realized this semester how rampant it is. Have any of you seen the movie The Great Debaters? Denzel Washington, Forrest Whitaker. Go see it. Go watch it. Get it on Netflix. It's about the debate team at Wiley College, an all-black college, and how they were one of the first black debate teams to debate a white debate team in 1930. In fact, the movie set at Harvard, but they actually debated USC. Okay, and there's some hard scenes in that movie, including tarring and feathering of blacks, burning them, lynching them. So it's not a feel-good movie altogether.
No.
Okay, and so after we watch a film like that, I always ask my students, what did you learn that you didn't know? And I had one student, one of my very, very bright students, raise their hand and said, I didn't know they lynched Negroes in the South. I mean, this is a very bright student. I had another one. By the way, Esther is here. Esther Bosch. Stand up, please.
Where's my bag? Esther Bosch.
Esther is a survivor of the Auschwitz Holocaust. And she is here. Honored that she's here. And the reason I had you stand is because you did a series of about 4 lectures in Ollie, and I gave my students extra credit if they would go and see you. So one of my students went to see you, and I have them write up a little blurb about what they learned, and she goes, I didn't know anything about the Holocaust.
It's tough.
I didn't know anything about the Holocaust. That was the first line of her paper. Okay, so there's a lot of misinformation out there about diversity, about differences, about interpersonal interactions.
I'm Esther's daughter, Rachel, and Mom and I gave these 4 classes together, and it was by far the most incredibly rewarding experience we've ever had. And as you say about the knowledge, on the evaluations after the class, the most amazing one was that people found this class to be life-changing, that
Absolutely.
there is so much that they did not know. And unless we're open and talk about who we are, they'll never know. So it was a wonderful experience.
So I have a question for you all.
Let me say something real
Okay.
quick.
No.
One of the
No,
things.
this is my room.
Okay. Apparently not. Oh, that's why I pushed on that idea of teaching the intergroup history related to your field. It's there somewhere, and it does change people's lives because it changes people's perspectives. That's all I was going to say. The room is yours.
Now I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay. Well, talking about misinformation, the same poll, Americans unhappy, the news media is viewed unfavorably by 54% of the American population. So the question then becomes, how do you find out? If 54% of Americans are now not trusting the news media, and we know there are political forces at work for that to happen, how do you find the truth? It ain't on Facebook. It's not on Instagram. Our classrooms are so important. So important.
So, Dr. Nacoste, maybe you can address this, and I would like to know if the others of you have had this experience. Last week in my class, we were talking about these issues, and the conversation turned to the discussion of how hard it is to talk about these issues. I mean, students want to talk about them, but they say, this is difficult stuff to talk about. We don't know the language and about how to talk about these issues. We don't know what's proper to say. If we say this, are we going to get in trouble? Or are we going to offend somebody? And so in our culture right now, we don't even have the language to have these discussions. So has anybody else experienced something like that? You want to comment?
Oh, just some of my students are here too. I teach. Yeah, no, we watched a video. We watch videos that students show every week, and I don't know what they are. And they come in and they show them cold, and they bring up stuff, and it was pretty I mean, so my bias is that video we watched, which definitely dealt with race and identity. Was not shocking to me, and other people were like, wow, that brought up some deep stuff. You know, so I have to really work to understand how deep the differences are everywhere. Yeah. And I need to learn more and
and your openness to that exploration is really important. There are huge disconnects. When I talk about growing up in the Jim Crow South, my students start curling up in little balls because they haven't heard the truth. They haven't. But I can speak to the truth. So when I have them read things about that, and they say, Dr. Nacoste, I go, yes, that really happened. But there's a huge disconnect that we always have to try and find ways to bring into the classroom in a productive way. So you notice today in my presentation, I'm doing a lot of storytelling, right? Yeah, storytelling. So yeah, I push on the Jim Crow South thing, but then I talk about my interactions with my students. So coffee shop interaction. So people are listening to that. It's funny, but it brings up the race stuff, the things that people are struggling with. So I'm bringing people through that gap with the story. So then I can give them the language that you were talking about of neurodiversity and get people to at least be closer to a productive dialogue, to have a productive dialogue.
Oh, wait. I really like that first point you made about the coffee shop and about how she couldn't refer to you as African American, or she was scared to. I had a really, really similar situation. I was on the phone with my boss, and she said, "Can you describe the student?" And the student, he was Asian, and that's what I said. He's an Asian student. But then right after that, I felt this feeling like, should I not have said that? Is she gonna think I'm some kind of like bigot, like we spoke of before?
There we go.
Just by saying he's Asian, which is something that I think is a positive. I think your ethnicity or your race is a really positive thing. But then I felt like I put my foot in my mouth. So I just like that you brought that up because it's such a relevant issue right now.
Yes, Yes. And we have to help people through those moments. Describing someone is describing someone. You may have stuff attached to that description. You got to deal with that. Because describing me as a big giant black man is actually pretty accurate. Okay. If you have other feelings attached to that, that would be on you, not on me. But we have to help people through these intergroup feelings and tensions. We have to we cannot, and punishing people. Whew. One of the things I do in my class, especially the interdependence and race course, is really set up a class discussion policy where I'm really clear about we're going to talk about these things. We're not going to use discriminating language. And then I use this example. I said, one of the things we will not use is racial slurs. And they go like, yeah. But I want to make sure that they understand what the breadth of racial slurs is. So I tell them this story. I had a white male in the class one semester, and he was talking, and then I had the safe space rule, class discussion policy. And he said, yeah, I was interacting with this redneck guy. So a white guy says, I was interacting with a redneck guy. And I stopped him. I said, no. He's like, what? He calls himself a redneck. I said, we are not going to do that in here because that is a racial slur. It is. Just because somebody decides that they want to call themselves that, just like some people believe that, black people believe that they can talk to each other using the word nigger, is still a racial slur. If I say someone is a redneck, trust me, I am not giving them a compliment. It is a racial slur. But I use that example to show them the breadth of what the context in which we're going to operate. And we can talk about racial stuff, but we're not going to use those kinds of languages. So that's what we have to help people do, is to have productive dialogue. There's a hand on this end.
Yes, and I wanted to ask the students that are here, and I see a lot of students here, if you would give us a gift. You've heard the presentation.
Oh.
You've heard what this is about. Tell us what you're thinking, please. Tell us how to help you help us communicate better to you. So we'll start over here.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I do obviously agree that it's important to ultimately reject their philosophies, but I'm concerned that a lot of bigots today, they see themselves as social martyrs to their ideas, and I just wondered what your thoughts were on that, how to handle it, make them feel heard and let them know that even though they can back up their idea with this crazy logic.
But you gotta stop doing that. That's one way. Okay. That doesn't help. Okay. Okay. Somebody asked me this yesterday about people on, and it's in the newspaper this morning, people on the left calling anybody who voted for Donald Trump a racist. Okay. So now what you've done is you've categorized a whole group of people by their vote and turned it into they're all white supremacists and KKK members. Wow. Really? Okay, no. But that's the kind of stuff we have to avoid because it does lock people in to something. Or I had a white male ask me this after the election. White male student, after I did a workshop for our student affairs group, their resident advisors, he came up to me very contrite and very vulnerable. And he said, Dr. Nacoste, do you think it's possible that if people keep calling you a racist, you might become a racist? I was like, okay, what are you talking about? He says, well, my friends found out I voted for Donald Trump. And now they all are calling me racist. He says, I said to them, have you ever seen me do anything racial? And they said, no. He said, well, how? And he said, but you're a racist because you voted for Donald Trump. This is a real problem because it does push people. It angers people. The multi-dimensions that went into the vote for President Trump are multi-dimensions. But now we're trying to lock people in, and we think that's productive. It is not productive. When I bring up President Trump, notice how I keep saying President Trump. I am not going to do what people did to President Obama. Not my president. This is our system. He is duly elected. Until that it changes, he is president and commander-in-chief. And I served under an awful commander-in-chief, Richard M. Nixon. Until there was proven criminal behavior or unfitness, he was the commander-in-chief. I will never refer to President Trump as other than President Trump. Do I have to agree with everything he does? Of course not. But we start doing this us versus them thing, and we start creating more problems. And that's on us.
I just wanted to, hello.
Oh, there you go.
Speak a little bit to Mark's question. I was teaching on September 11th down in the Valley.
Oh!
Yeah, and that morning, and I was teaching a developmental English class at the time that was primarily made up of new immigrants to America who were in the process of obtaining their citizenship.
Oh.
And we, honest to goodness, walked into the school that morning and had no idea. Even, what had happened, news was still coming in, and no idea what to say or even what to do, and were we holding class, were we not holding class, what was going on. And so I put everybody in a circle because I didn't know what else to do, and then sort of just sat there, and one of the students said, this is going to change everything for us. And that thought had not yet even entered my mind. I was still trying to process what was happening, with the planes, with everything. And so they led that discussion. I was not a first-generation immigrant.
Oh.
I did not have their experience, and this whole entire room began to speak about what we have seen absolutely playing out over the subsequent years. And it was such a profound teaching moment and learning moment for me as an instructor to allow. I was glad I had that circle in the first place, but they blew open a perspective that I had not yet had at all. So it was I just wanted to share that was a really important moment, and our students have so much to share with us in that way.
And that was a brave approach, especially under those circumstances. But sometimes we do need to listen, we professors, we instructors. We need to learn. I learn from my students all the time. What do I know about dating? So I know if I got lectures that I want to talk about this kind of dynamic, but I know if I use what I have in my head, they're gonna really, and I play with it. I say, so how many of y'all courting? See, look at you. See, that would be goofy, because they don't know what that word means, and there's a reason for that, and I can do that systematically, but I got to get them there. So I know not to just use my frame of reference. I'm 65 years old. How old are you? There you go. So I can learn some stuff. Mark, the hands all over the place here.
All right. It is 11:30.
Oh, yeah, we got to stop.
And we're going to have to stop here. One of our goals was to open up the conversation. We could go on for hours, I'm sure. Yeah. Okay? And I hope what we've accomplished in the last couple of days is giving ourselves permission to discuss these so we can be better instructors, better student service personnel, better students, okay? Because we are not afraid to address this. And we can build a community of respect here on our campus. Like I said to convocation, the faculty at convocation, my dream is to have a campus environment where we don't need a respect campaign. It's just who we are. Thank you, Dr. Nacoste.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.